Hi, this is Joyce Young. Thanks for joining Powerhouse. Today we have Stephanie Poon with us. She's an arts and cultural strategist, co-founder to CDD, arts PR firm, and soon to be mom of 3. So here we go. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, Joyce. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Well, so I remember we met quite a few years back, and 7-8 years ago. So relating to one of our movie launch, but also the start of your company, CDD, arts PR firm. So that's quite interesting. Get to see your growth business-wise and also family. You're on to your third child, so that's very exciting. And so before we go into that, I actually just kind of want to step back and maybe you can talk about how you got into art and cultural related
Sure. So I actually did architecture at university. I did 1 year of it, but actually after one term, I decided that architecture just is not for me. But they required me to complete the whole course. So after a year, I changed into art history. And then after I did my art history degree, I started working in marketing. And when I was doing marketing, I felt that it was too far away from what I was actually passionate about. So that was for DCMS, Department of Culture, Media and Sports in London. And so decided to look for something more within the arts field. And then I started working in an arts PR company, which is also very boutique within London, but they have very high-profile blue-chip clients, so lots of museums, government projects, etc. And then as I worked there, I realized that my knowledge, there was a huge gap in my knowledge. What I had studied was mostly historical, so it was Gothic, Byzantium, and then I literally knew nothing about contemporary, so decided to do a master's in contemporary art at Sotheby's Institute.
And that's in London as well?
In London, yeah. And then I came back after that and started working in events. But whilst I was in Hong Kong working in events, I still felt that I was too far away from the arts. So decided to look for jobs, couldn't find anything that I liked at the time. And that's how it all started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you always been interested in arts and art history, even as a kid? And how did you kind of get into that?
Actually, no. So when I was in Hong Kong as a child, you don't get a lot of art exposure. I mean, there were no museums, there were no galleries. You would go to art classes, but that's about the extent. So you would look at an object and draw it. It's not very imaginative or free. But when I went to school in the UK, I slowly grew to like the arts, whether it's drama, music, or painting. So I did one of my core subjects as art. But I didn't actually realize that there's art history as a subject until university. So the architecture department and the art history department shared the same building in my university. And I just started going to the art history classes.
A lot more than your architecture.
And found it much more interesting than my architecture classes. And that's how I made the decision.
The transition.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Yeah, that's good to kind of get back to that and realize that's what you're really interested in.
So it's by pure chance.
Nice, yeah. And when you came back to Hong Kong, so as you said, it's kind of hard to find something that is in that space. And so how did you then transition to starting your own business?
Right, so when I first came back, I started working with one of my greatest mentors, who's Yana Peel, and she's very involved in the arts, along with many, many other projects. So I was mainly in my capacity doing Intelligence Squared, which was a debate, and it still is a debate platform. And they do it globally. They cover lots of different topics: social affairs, economics, politics, arts and culture. And for me, I enjoyed the arts and culture element the most. And then Yana was also working on a book, Art for Baby. It's a series, and so I learned a lot about, copywriting, different ways to address, use art within your daily life. And then after a few years doing Intelligence Squared, I decided I wanted to be fully within the arts, 24/7.
Right.
And so that's how it started.
Yeah.
And and you have a partner as well. Maybe can talk about how that chance meeting also kind of helped bring the business together.
So that's interesting. Yes, I have a wonderful business partner. She's called Ada, and we met through friends. So when we first came back to Hong Kong, she had been studying at Christie's in London. And when we first came back, we had mutual friends who basically said, there are not many people like you two in Hong Kong.
Right.
You should meet. So we met at a darts cafe, and we hit it off pretty well. Decided that, okay, we should be friends going to galleries together, and there were maybe only 1 or 2 galleries. So we did some of the gallery walkthroughs together, and then we actually found out that our thinking are pretty similar. And I think I'm not entirely sure how that conversation came about, but we decided, okay, well, there's nothing that we both really want to do within the existing art career path, so why don't we try something new? And so we set up the company, CDD, and we didn't have a clear vision for what we wanted to do with the company. It's very much ad hoc. Let's try it out. So that's the very beginning of it.
But it started off with seeing that there's not too much representation in the art world, and so kind of went with the PR angle first, so representing.
No, so we started the company thinking, okay, well, we can actually help small and big companies promote the arts to more people. We didn't have PR experience necessarily. I mean, I did from London, but I don't think I went in thinking, okay, this is what I have to do and this is what I'm going to do, and that's it. So when we first started out, we did everything that you can imagine. So we would look for artists to sign. We would write. We would do marketing design work, painting walls, curating, even though we're not curators. So then slowly we refined and fine-tuned our offering and figured out what we're good at and also what the gap is in the market. And that happened to be communication. So communication could be marketing events or media relations, PR, etc.
Right, just to kind of connect the artists and help them spread the word and market them. And, yeah, that's great. And how do you see, so that's been a few years, and what kind of change in the market do you see, especially the art world? Because I mean, in Hong Kong, it grew quite a bit during the past 5 to 8 years.
Huge amount has changed. I mean, I think when we first started, I don't think many people appreciated art as a career or even as an industry. And over the years, we've seen, I mean, a huge flourishing of galleries, commercial galleries, many of which are from abroad. So many international galleries have opened up. And you also have auction houses. All the major auction houses have a base in Hong Kong. You have 2 big fairs in Hong Kong, along with a lot of other satellite fairs. So the community has grown, and also I think for the everyday public, going to an art fair, whether you are buying or not, you can purely go just to look at the pretty works and appreciate it.
So the awareness is better.
Awareness is much better, yeah. And I think it's becoming more of a habit, and you're starting to see courses, university courses that are on cultural management, arts administration, which we desperately need in the city because it's still hugely commercial. And I think the non-profit side probably needs to catch up a little bit, the grassroots aspect of the art world. But for sure, it's growing positively.
And then did that change a lot of how you guys structure the business as well, and the business offering over the years?
Yes, I mean, we definitely had to evolve. So as the industry grew, that allowed us as a company to grow, which was, I mean, we were very lucky that it was the right timing. I think finding the right people was a challenge. It's not always easy to find people. We don't require them to have art knowledge, but we require them to take an interest, and that's
which makes sense. Interested in what you're doing, right?
So that's actually been more difficult. But in terms of the business structure, we have had to offer a lot more services. So as well as, for example, social media services, digital, more marketing events, because more corporates and more luxury brands have entered the space, and they're also taking an interest in the arts. So the service had to be diversified, but I think the core offering of media relations was always maintained.
Maybe I can expand a little bit about hiring people, because it does sound like it's quite difficult to do that, and also when you're expanding, what are the main challenges then? How you guys overcome?
So I think finding the right talent is difficult, and it takes time, and sometimes it's just by pure luck that you come across people that will fit your culture. But also as a small business, maintaining the talent is even more difficult. So there's quite a natural cycle of people after 3 years to 4 years, because the nature of our work is fairly repetitive. Even though it's with different clients, the content of what you do is fairly similar. So how do you then inspire your colleagues to grow out of their comfort zone and learn something new? Obviously, we provide them with learning opportunities, so external ones. They can go on courses or classes, whether it's social media related or whether it's art related or marketing related. We give them a lot of freedom, but I think it's just part of the process. It's definitely a challenge and a difficulty to retain them for a long period of time.
Yeah, and it's always difficult. You spend so much time cultivating them, and then they, probably leave and go somewhere else.
But I also think that sometimes it's we don't necessarily think from their point of view. So in the sense that I think as a company, you do have to think what is best for your colleague, right? So if staying at the company is not going to help them to grow however much you try to, then maybe it's not the right place, right? Maybe they do need to go into a bigger company or another environment. So what works best for them should actually be first and foremost.
Right, that's right, yeah.
And so during this time, also you've been growing your family, and you have 2 kids, in the past few years, and 3rd along the way. How do you balance or manage a growing business and a growing family at this stage?
It was tough. I mean, it's not a lot of sleep. You have to be on call 24/7, but you kind of get into a rhythm of it, so you don't really realize how sucked in you get, and it is very rewarding. I mean, growing your family and your business, it's like having 2 different babies that you watch them grow and you watch them develop and mature, and it's a huge sense of satisfaction. But it was after my 2nd child that I think I started to get sick pretty frequently, and by pretty frequently it was every month. I was going to the doctors, so I would live between the office and the doctors.
Wow.
I tried every form of medicine.
So you mean like it could be a cold, or just kind of continuously having some type of just not feeling well?
It was just anything. I mean, I would have sinus problems, and I would have an eye problem, then I would have a cold that didn't go away, I would have ear infection.
Wow.
Just those. I mean, it was nothing major.
Right.
But it takes a toll.
Because lack of sleep and just too many things going on,
So then I decided that, okay, maybe I can't manage everything, right? So something's got to give.
Right.
So made a decision to switch to freelance, which is what I am doing now.
Right.
And that allows me to manage my time better. I have more time to look after the kids and the family and the homework, etc. But also keep doing what I like and love, and still being in touch with the art world in some form of way.
Right. And was that transition difficult? I mean, given that, well, you also have a partner with, the business, how do you work it out with your partner?
So she's very supportive. It has always been very supportive. We've never argued in 7 years.
Which is amazing.
Not once. Not even a bicker.
Wow.
I don't think that's ever existed.
That's amazing.
So I think that's rare, and she's, just a really good friend as well. So it was a difficult decision. I think not in terms of the business partnership.
Right.
It was quite easy. But I think the difficulty was in two aspects. So the first one is personal. You have to be ready emotionally to obviously give up something that you've built.
Because as you said, it's kind of another baby too, right?
Right.
So.
And there's a certain uncertainty about it. Right? You go from a very stable environment, you know what you're doing, and it's aggressive, you have to keep going out, to a more quiet, private form of role. Exactly. And the other difficulty is the clients, because we've built such long-term relationships with each of our clients. Most of them have been with us for, I would say, maybe at least 3 to 5 years. So then you want them to be taken care of. So how do you make sure that there's continuity with whichever agency or whichever person they choose afterwards, that knowledge is passed on well, and they're in good hands. And I think that's also a really big consideration, and also quite a difficult one to make.
That is difficult to kind of manage. Did it take long to transition?
I think it did. It definitely took half a year or more. For each client.
It's not too bad.
It's not too bad, but I think you have to talk to them, you have to communicate pretty well, and also oversee the transition, make sure that each aspect of our services are covered.
Right. That's true, but if you do it for each client, then I guess that's quite a bit of handing off. And how do you feel now that you're freelancing? What are the main services in terms of the freelance?
So I've actually moved a little bit away from media relations and PR, but I'm super happy. I think it's one of the best decisions that I've made. Starting the business was one of the best decisions, and leaving the business, ironically, is also one of the best moves. So right now I do freelance cultural strategy for brands and corporates. So by that, and a lot of the times people don't understand what that is working with the marketing teams of companies and how to help them incorporate art and culture into their businesses in a meaningful way for them, as well as for the public or whoever they wish to engage on the opposite end.
That makes sense, because there's a lot of programs that companies put together now to have impact in different sectors or different meaningful areas. So this is one segment that you help them kind of craft the strategy.
And I think each brand has a different vision, mission. They have their own brand identity, and that means that they can't just work with any artist that they like, right? They have to work with certain artists that fit their outlook, that fit their mission or their kind of CSR program as well. And also there are lots of non-profits, but which ones to engage with, it's actually a lot more nuanced than people might think.
Right, I'm sure, there's lots of steps
so it's fun
to consider, and channels, right? Like, where do you put them, and Do you still do a lot of like social media strategy for them, like within that arts and cultural?
Yes, so I do. For some clients, I work exclusively on social media, coming up with content, writing. I still do a lot of writing, and that's always fun because you're always learning. I mean, social media, whether it's Instagram or Telegram or Snapchat or Facebook, they change every other day. Right. So it's a job in itself to keep updated.
Right, and then they change their strategy as well, so you can keep up with how to
and their analytics and things like that. So
do you feel like there's a lot of do you feel like there's a lot more, you're focusing a lot more in the terms of the freelance side, a lot more your strength or things that you're interested in?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was a very clear path for me to focus on things that I enjoy and I think I'm better at. There are certain elements of PR that don't necessarily suit me after so many years. I really enjoy what I do now.
That's great. Any next steps coming up? Or
I'm working on a book which is completely different, but it is based on art historical masters, so Degas, Monet, and all along the art historical timeline.
Right.
And each artist will be illustrated and accompanied by an activity for toddlers.
For toddlers,
so
that's great.
Completely different. I've never done anything within books or publishing or anything like that. It just,
but related,
came
it's in
out of
art.
Habit. Well, that's just about the only thing I know.
But that's good, and that fits well with a family as well, right? Like with toddlers, you know, 2 toddlers and a baby, and so that really works well. And
I test it on my kids, make sure that they like it and they can handle it. So tried and tested.
That's good. Do you know when it's going to come to market?
I'm still working on it, but hopefully within the next year.
Awesome.
So let's see. Now that I've said it to you, I probably should get going with it.
That's good. Set a timeline on it, right, and just get it out in the public, and you can make sure to finish it. Yeah, looking forward to that. And any advice for our audience in terms of work and how to especially like pivot from different opportunities or manage, balancing work and family?
I think there's no right or wrong way. I mean, for each person, it's very different. Circumstances are different. Family environment, work environment is different. So I think do whatever is right for yourself and your family. There's no set rule. I think for starting a business, I would say that follow your passion, but definitely be realistic with your goals. Don't aim for the sky. That rarely works out. I think, having stepping stones and kind of making sure that you achieve one step at a time, and making sure that you do something really well is quite important.
Very good advice. And one more question. What's something that's surprising that people would find about you?
I would say that I'm an introvert, which is also ironic for
being
in marketing and PR, which you're expected to be an extrovert. Yeah. So I think I can be an extrovert, but that's not my nature. Right.
So how do you feel being an introvert in this industry, like over the years? Do you feel that play better?
Well, it's worked well, partially because of, actually both Ada and I are pretty introverted. Wow. It's worked well because our business is not, it is in PR and marketing, but it's not a purely events-based company. Right. If you are purely events-based, then obviously I don't think I would have survived. I would have given up years ago. But there's a lot of grit work. There's a lot of administration work. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes Excels and Word documents and editing.
That someone has to look internally and just kind of draw energy from within.
And just do it. Just sit down and do it. Right. But that's worked well for us. Yeah. So, you play to your strengths.
That's right. Great. Well, thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course.